Well, you know, talking about great stars, I remember I used to have an afro. But of course, when I used to have an afro, everybody used to have an afro. And somebody said that was a long time ago. Thank you. A very pleasant good afternoon to you. Protocol having been already established, let me just say I'm very happy to have you here. I'm very sorry the Ramming brothers aren't here because, quite frankly, they were supposed to set a particular tone for this afternoon's celebrations. But nonetheless, you're here, and that's the most important thing. This evening has come at long last. But the celebration of our country's 40th anniversaries began in November of last year with the Sir Sidney Poitier Bridge dedication. And I dare say that based on the sheer scope of the work and ambitions of the committee, the 40th will resound with nation-building activities well into next year. This event this evening sets the stage for the publication of the fairs, the festivals, the concerts, the exhibitions and special events that have been approved so far. There is a multiplicity of considerations yet to be made, and these too will be published as we move along. We shall shortly be announcing the website that will not only ensure that the public can be knowledgeable about upcoming events, but allows the public to suggest improvements and ideas for further considerations. Allow me also at this time to thank the myriad organizations and individuals who have made submissions and offered suggestions for celebrations. Bahamians are generally proud to be Bahamian, and the level of involvement from the public reflects that. These celebrations have just one real goal in mind. My generation needs to educate the next generation so that that generation will feel about this country the way people of my generation feel about this country. In a real sense, those of us who are my age, and I'll be 70 next month, can count themselves lucky, fortunate to have lived in the Bahamas when we lived in the Bahamas. Because growing up in Baintown, I got all the brought-up sea I needed to go and face the world anywhere in the world. And I have faced the world in many ways, privately, and as a public servant, and as a representative of this country, knowing that whatever they gave me down on Augusta Street was world class. And everywhere I went, I made sure people knew who I was and what I represented. And if I didn't find a thread that would make them appreciate the Bahamas, that was a situation where I wasn't talking. Because if I couldn't tell you about Joseph Spence and get you to appreciate that genius can come out of the bush, if I didn't tell you about Tony McKay and get you to know that growing up in Canaan Lane and coming to New York, that fella took over the village. If I couldn't tell you about Paul Mers and tell you he danced at the Folies Bergère in Paris, if I couldn't tell you about Sidney Poitier and told you he stole Broadway and ruled Hollywood, I'd find some reason to tell you about my country. And I could name dozens of Bahamians who are unknown to even knowledgeable Bahamas and Bahamians. And during the next few days, you will begin to hear a number of ads, a number of promos, a number of sound bites that reminds Bahamians why particular schools were named after particular Bahamians, why we celebrate particular holidays, and who are the lost Bahamians. When I say lost, lost to our generation, because there are so many of them. In our planning sessions, we talk about the Bahamians that we know that most Bahamians do not know. And I could spill off a number of names now that will just absolutely startle you. That this little country of 300,000 people have produced a flower bed of brilliance that would make every Bahamian proud to be Bahamian. I had the pleasure of addressing the cabinet this morning when I told them that we have 3 Rhodes Scholars from a brain pool of 300 to 400,000 people, and that is the highest per capita percentage of smart people in the whole world. They were surprised. It's knowledge that is there that unfortunately we don't share enough. You don't learn to be a Bahamian in schools anymore. You don't learn that broad-of-sea that we used to have in Baintown. You don't learn who you are in the families that we have nowadays, because so much has changed about the Bahamas. And so when the Prime Minister asked me to chair this committee, it gave me one more chance to do something for my country. I was on the Independence Committee 40 years ago that had the historic duty of deciding what is the national anthem of our country. And imagine that. Father Willie Thompson sitting down and going through every line, every nuance of all those submissions, and there were many. Reverend Philip Rhyming right there, he submitted a very good one. But lift up your head to the rising sun, Bahamaland. I don't care who you are. If you are a Bahamian, you could be as white as snow, as black as coal. That gotta touch you somewhere. That gotta touch you somewhere. And you know when it touches you, you go someplace. You go someplace. And suddenly you hear your national anthem, and it gives me goosebumps. I got goosebumps just talking about it right now. I am of that generation. So is Perry Christie. He won't tell you, but me and him born the same year. I tell you which year I born. I can invite him to my party. And I was happy when he asked me to assist at this stage, because, my brothers and sisters, this is the last opportunity for our generation to impact the future of this country. It comes at a time where we need this infusion of culture, this infusion, if you like, of citizenship, this infusion of broad-of-sea, to tell Bahamians who we've always been. And let me just say this as I introduce the Prime Minister. Because of the work I do at Island FM, because of who we are at Island FM, and what we try to do at Island FM, I am aware of more creative Bahamians than most people. And I say to you, the gene pool, the talent pool of this country is better than ever. There are more brilliant Bahamians being born every day in this country than has ever been born. Not because there are more Bahamians, it's just that we live in an area where you are fertilized just right. Honestly, we have something very, very special here that makes Bahamians take Sidney Poitier as another ordinary fella. He's extraordinary everywhere else, but he's an ordinary fella in the Bahamas. And I always say facetiously, if you want to see good acting, come to Bay Street any day. So there we are. So when my friend Perry Christie invited me to chair this committee, I jumped at the opportunity. It gives me one more opportunity to try and influence my country I got 5 grandchildren, and I want them to feel about this country the way I feel about this country.